This is the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Boundaries or burnout, you make the choice. Here's your host, Michael Levitt. Welcome to another episode of the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. It's Michael here, and today I've got Shane Bender from Bender CFO Services. How's it going, Shane?
It's going well. How you doing, Michael?
I'm great. Thanks for being on the show, and I look forward to our conversation today, especially when it comes to forecasting your future. And for business owners and entrepreneurs, money is kind of an important thing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you're doing with your organization, and we'll jump into your book as well in a few minutes. But ideally, just introduce yourself to the audience and the services that your organization provides.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the show. And I provide CFO services for small businesses. And so really what kind of got me into this area is that I used to be in the corporate world doing finance and accounting. I spent over 15 years in that area doing like controller all the way up to VP finance, kind of CFO level type work. But I also came across in 2015 a concept of helping smaller businesses that can't afford a full-time CFO, which, I mean, that's what's a CFO cost, right? A couple $100,000 plus and a year and bonuses and everything. And so basically I go into a small business and on a part-time basis, provide that same level of service at a much lower cost and give them that benefit of a lot more insight into the business financials, forecast where they're going to go, help them with decisions. And so that's what my business does on a real high level view there.
That's a great service to offer because many organizations they can't afford a top-notch CFO, but services like that gives them access to the same level of a financial professional, and just when they need them. Because many organizations, especially larger ones, of course, they have gigantic teams of people. And you'd mentioned, the corporate world, and I came from that space as well. And there's a CFO, and then there's a department of people and all of that. And those costs get passed on to the products that they make. Now, I'm not trying to tell corporate to get rid of their CFOs. That's the last thing we need. We need them to make sure that everything's going well for those organizations. But many businesses that run our country are small business, and oftentimes we're seeing the leaders and the families that are running these businesses. They're the salesperson, they're the accountant, they're the marketing person, they're doing all of these things. So having a service like yours available to people is a great thing because what needs to be done, the accounting rules and everything as far as keeping the books in shape and balanced and, forecasting for any potential cash flow challenges or anything like that. So the owners that created the business can really focus on, running the business and, doing the things that they desired to do when they came up with the idea to create the business in the first place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, ultimately I'm trying to help save them money because many times they get to a certain size, like, I need to hire a CFO or I need to hire these positions. I remember working in a company about a decade ago, and it was like there was a VP of all the different positions, COO, controller, there was marketing person, VP marketing, VP of everything, HR, just kind of, you really can't hire all those VPs. I mean, you won't have any money left to run your business. And what I found is there's this sweet spot of, I would say, $2 million in annual revenue to $20 million in annual revenue, where they just cannot afford a full-time CFO. And there are some of my other colleagues think that you can go higher than 20 million in annual revenue and do it if you have a good accounting staff in place. And so now, one of the things I've found in doing this is I want to help all businesses. And I mean, there's a ton of businesses that are smaller than 2 million in annual revenue. And that is the reason why I wrote my book, Forecast Your Future, How Small Businesses Exchange Stress and Chaos for Cash and Clarity. along with the course that goes along with it. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, they still need to be educated on these areas, these high level areas of financially running their business. And, once they get that understanding in place, I think it helps them tremendously.
Oh, most definitely. And yeah, those businesses that are under $2 million, with the right financial expertise assisting them, then they can get past that 2 million. And I've seen it happen many times where a small business, all of a sudden, they go from making less than $1 million a year, or maybe up to $1 million a year, and within a couple of years, they're at 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, because the product that they have created or service they've created is in high demand, and now they need somebody to help them out with it. But helping those organizations out that are under 2 million, which there's many of them, is awesome. And it's great that you wrote the book to talk about that. So let's jump into that. I know you kind of alluded to it a little bit about what inspired you to write the book, but tell us a little bit about the book writing process. What drove you to do that? What was the motivation behind it, and what are some discoveries you've had now that you're a published author?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question. I must say it's kind of strange initially when a numbers person talks about writing a book, right? Because we're numbers, not words. But I really actually found it fun to write the book, and a lot of it started from my marketing efforts of just writing blog articles and posting them in places, and that's when I started my business 3 years ago. That was one form of marketing that I did, and over time, there were people that said, "Hey, you need to put all that in a book." And originally, it was going to be like a little ebook, a little pamphlet, a little something. And then it just turned into a much more involved book with a course. And a lot of it had to do with talking to different business owners. And I would work with many of them, especially I still today will talk with business owners and just give them some guidance when they're small and they can't really afford me, but I want to help them out. And a lot of it's the same type of story. It's and the book breaks down to 4 sections. And the first step is to understand where you are today financially. And I don't know, it seems like it's very common to go into a small business and they don't even know where they are today. They don't know their financial situation. They're months behind on any kind of accounting. They really don't, they don't understand their margins, their profit. They definitely don't know their cash flow, because that's sort of the last component of it, except for looking at their bank account, which is that's the worst. That's one of the worst places to kind of determine how well you're doing, is by just simply looking at your bank account. So there's just a lot of issues with that. So where are you today financially? How do you get yourself current and be able to understand where you are? And then once you get there, many of them do not even think about forecasting, putting together a forecast model to determine where they want to go financially. And, we're at the beginning of the year, and so you might have financial goals like, okay, I want the revenue to be this much. I want profit to be this much. And, that you can write that out on paper, but there's so many variables that go into play, and you have to build some kind of model to do that. And I outline a way to do that in a pretty simplified way. You can get complex with these kinds of things, but I'm talking about something simple that you can look at: revenue, expenses, profit, and basically ultimately cash flow on a monthly basis and tweak it, because small businesses, things change all the time. So you have to be ready to tweak it and adjust and assess and adjust as you go. And then ultimately more quickly. And so that's kind of the third section of the book, is how to reach your financial goals more quickly. And there are a lot of ways to do that. There are certain things like consistency, just having consistent processes, having good self-discipline techniques. Some of the things that I might do is just having a good process each morning, to kind of go through, okay, what's your top 3 things you're going to accomplish today, and what are assessing each day on struggles, and what are you going to do to overcome those struggles? What are some good things that happened that day? Just really keeping track of your large goals, along with breaking those down into the the weekly and the daily chunks. And there's a lot of sections. I mean, it's a large amount of information in there about reaching those goals more quickly. And then ultimately that last section of the book is about assessing and adjusting. And it's just, that part is essential. I mean, you have to look at your financials on a regular basis and assess. That's kind of your assessment. So, okay, this is what's going on. This is what happened in 2018, this is what happened last month. And ultimately, how that's going to, when do I need to adjust something? Do I need to hire somebody? Or maybe it's, you have to cut some expenses temporarily. Or maybe you have to go get a line of credit to help with cash flow. All those are assessments, and then you might have to make adjustments. And so you talk a lot about that, those 4 sections in the book.
Those are incredible lists of things to do. And again, many organizations fail to do any of them. They may glance, like you said, at their bank statement and go, okay, what's in the account? And they say, okay, well, can we pay this bill, or when should we pay this bill? But they don't really understand when revenues come in, because most businesses, not all, but most businesses have seasons where, the revenue is coming in pretty fast and furious. My original career years and years ago is I worked for a public accounting firm. So I know debits equal credits and trial balances and some of the year's digits and all those other nightmarish terms that I thought I erased from my memory, but apparently they're still there. I say that tongue in cheek, of course. But as a tax office, our busy season was during tax season. So that's when the majority of our clients were coming in. We did have an audit portion of our firm as well. But again, the big revenue was during tax season. So we knew as an organization, that's when everything was going to be. And then, the fall wouldn't be as busy as far as income was concerned. So we, of course, had to, plan accordingly and do things. But many organizations don't. They could have an absolutely amazing second quarter of a year, and quarter 4 is an absolute disaster where, they hardly get any revenue. Well, if they weren't planning appropriately, then that's going to be a really difficult conversation to have at the dinner table and with, the people that you may have working for you. It's like, we have no money because we weren't planning it correctly in quarter 2. So it happens, and it happens every day, unfortunately. So your book needs to be in the hands of every small business owner, even the ones that have been around for a while and have been successful. I could all but guarantee that they're not following all 4 of those steps that you list.
Well, it's kind of funny. Like, I'll go back and I can read books or go back and read a concept that I thought I already knew, and I'm not doing it. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot I need to be doing that. So sometimes it's just refreshing us from what we already know we should be doing. But a lot of this is just like letting them be aware that there is a better way to do it. I mean, I have a story in the book, and I'm just going to share it. It's a situation where, and I thought it was very applicable to a business. I had this clog in my bathroom sink drain, and it was kind of bothering me. I kept putting Drano down it for the longest time. And then ultimately I said, okay, I'm going to fix this. And I'm not a handy person by any means. So I get on YouTube, I couldn't even figure out how to get the stopper off of the sink. I was like, how do I get this out? So I had to YouTube it and ultimately figure out how to get the stopper out. And it was just disgusting in there. And I had to just pull all that out. I had to take the stopper and everything to another sink, clean it out, and put it all back together. And then ultimately, I mean, it was like the sink was draining really well. And I just I kind of wondered why it took me so long to do that in the first place. Why was I brushing my teeth under such a disgusting mess under there, and I was thinking about, like, businesses are like that. They grow, and they get to a point where they just get all messed up, clogged up, and you just have to go in there and you have to assess it. You have to get in there and be like, oh man, this is disgusting. And it gets messy sometimes cleaning it up. If you're behind in your financials, if you haven't even looked at if you're like 6 months behind, or you don't even know where you are today, it could be messy to figure it all out. But once you get past all that and you clean it all up and you have efficient financials, and it gets so much more efficient too, because if you just stay on top of it and you stay on top of your forecast model, you can make decisions faster. You can basically grow faster. You're more versatile, and it's huge. It makes you have a much better experience being a business owner, and so I think that's that's an analogy I think that all business owners need to think about.
Well, absolutely, and I think too, and I've seen it in all types of examples where we, like you said with the faucet situation, where there's something that we just deal with. And, I see it a lot with people that are selling their homes. Most people that do any type of renovations to their homes, they'll do maybe 90, 95%, but there's always that last 5% that they never bother to deal with, like putting up the trim around the windows or something along those lines. And then they decide, okay, well, we're going to sell it. So they end up finishing everything. So then the house is, it's, ready to be sold. So it's perfect, looks good and all of that. And they go, wow, this actually looks pretty good. And then they leave the house and they move away. And it's funny how often we do things where we limp along with something that's, I should do that. I should take care of that. And we don't. And procrastination is one of those things that, seeps into all kinds of levels of our life. And, unfortunately for a lot of businesses, looking at their books is one of those challenges as well. I know you've alluded to it a few times, through our conversation today, but I guess, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see small businesses make over and over and over again?
Yeah, and I did allude to the mistake of looking, managing your decision by looking at the bank account. I think that's the number one problem, because you could have a lot more cash in your account than, and that could be for a number of reasons. You could be borrowed some money, or you just had some, could be seasonality, like you mentioned. There could be a number of reasons why the cash has gone up. But you might have some expenses coming in the future. And so you need to kind of look at all aspects, not just your P&L too. A lot of business owners will only look at the P&L. I had that, actually, one of my clients recently, he really, in working with him, he was like, I was kind of spending all my time looking at the P&L, and he was talking with other people. And it's like, you really need to understand your balance sheet. And, I think, the balance sheet is a little bit of a more complicated report for someone who's not an accounting person, but it's something that you've got to learn about, because that's where your receivables are, and that's where your payables are, and your other liabilities, and debt. You're paying off your debt principals and all that. That was an issue. Actually, that was an issue with this client. It was like the P&L, and he was like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I had cash at this point. Now I have cash at this point, but this is my profit. But that doesn't. It's not reconciling. And I'm like, well, you're missing your principal payments, which were not on the income statement. Just things like that are, it's an education. But you know what? If you're going to own a business, it's not difficult education. I think there's also a bad mindset out there with business owners. Some people have this, what I call a disempowering, or maybe a scarcity mindset, or just a bad mindset financial, in the sense that they're like, oh, I'm not a numbers person. I can't know any of this. This is not, this is too much, technology is too difficult, or some kind of thing, a story they're telling themselves. And it's like, you know what? I'm not telling you got to do all the debits and credits. You might need to hire a bookkeeper, or maybe you need to hire a CFO, but you still, we're not talking about hard math. It's third grade math. We can figure this out, and you can learn it. And just the basics, so that you know how to manage your business.
Yes, accrual accounting definitely throws some people off. They don't quite grasp the concept of it, but it definitely gives you a much clearer picture than the typical cash accounting methods that a lot of people think is what they have. It's like, oh, I have this in my bank account. That's my revenue. Not necessarily. And that doesn't mean, woohoo, that's your net profit either. Nope. You've got expenses. Yet to find a business that has zero expenses. That would be an interesting discovery, if that ever existed. So, no, this is an awesome, awesome list of things, and definitely encourages, hopefully, the listener to take a better look and and get past the fear of understanding the financial picture. Because if you understand your picture and you know what you need to do, you can grow your business faster than if you don't, and then you don't necessarily have to be worried as much and spending so much time on it if you keep on top of it and just make it part of your everyday operating system of how you run your business.
You made me think of one other thing when you were talking. I was like, I mean, there's really a lot of things, but this is probably one of the number one risks or issues that I see with business owners is they just sort of do the accounting for tax purposes, only for tax purposes, and so they may be cash basis tax. I mean that they're doing it based on that, and the problem is there's a difference between operationally making decisions financially and your taxes. And one, if you only did your books for taxes, then you filed an extension, you technically don't have to even know anything that's happening in your business till maybe September or October of you won't even know 2018 until later this year, which is not a good way to run your business. You have to be operationally on the ball, and accrual helps you understand your margins better. I mean, many businesses, they may have situations where they invoice their revenues happening this month, and they want to match those expenses so they know truly how profitable they were that month. And that's why accrual is helpful, and that's more of an operation. It's actually a better operational tool for you to grow your business.
That, and also too, if you're not keeping on top of where things are, you miss the opportunity when opportunities come up for you to, maybe take a couple different steps, which could grow your business tenfold. But if you don't know where your financial picture is, you won't be able to act on that, and then you're in reactionary mode, and that opportunity passes and you're still plugging along at under $1 million, where if you would have been aware of it and said, okay, I can leverage this, I know my balance sheet, I could probably get a line of credit to cover the initial cost on this, but the return on it is going to be, like I said, tenfold in a very short period of time. That's why it's so crucial for you to be on top of your books all the time with your organization, and don't get frustrated by it. Everyone starts off at some point, and they're not going to be multi-billionaire in year one unless you come up with something amazing. But that doesn't preclude you from being able to make some significant revenue and income for your business or operations. But again, being on top of your financial picture helps that along tremendously.
Yes, for sure.
So Shane, where can people find out more about you and your book, and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, my website, bendercfo.com, has pretty much everything on there. My book is Forecast Your Future, How Small Businesses Exchange Stress and Chaos for Cash and Clarity. You can find that on Amazon, on my website, in bookstores. There's also a corresponding course that is Forecast Your Future course.com. The book, you can actually go to forecastyourfuturebook.com if that's easier for you to get to the book. But the course is what that is really a much more in-depth view of how to first start out and understand 5 key areas. And it corresponds a lot with the book, but I broke it out slightly different. One, the first module is really talking about your financial mindset, having an empowered financial mindset. And that actually right now, if you go to forecastyourfuturecourse.com, you can sign up and get the first module for free. And you just go there and put your name, email in there, and it just literally will send you an email immediately of the first lesson, and then there's some other worksheets associated with it, and then you a day later get another lesson for 5 days, and so that's out there at forecastyourfuturecourse.com. And then the other modules that are in that book is implementing a revenue plan, how to spend wisely, ways to save money, or just really be more frugal and more smart about your expenses, and then there's a whole module on that we talk about cash, controlling your cash, which we talked a lot about that today. And then the last module is about accountability and different ways to be financial accountable.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing all those resources. And audience, I'll have all of that information in the show notes. So Shane, great to connect with you again. I know we met in the Igniting Souls conference in Columbus not too long ago at the author conference, and I'm glad to finally get you on the show.
Yeah, glad to be here, Michael. Thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Appreciate everything you're doing for small businesses and helping people get a better grasp of their financial future. So thanks again for being on the show.
All right. Thank you. You have a good day.
My pleasure. And until next time, everybody, be well. Hey, it's Michael again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you're like many people, you're dealing with some significant stress and possibly approaching burnout. I know how you feel. In 2009, my burnout led to a year of worst-case scenarios. I do not want that to happen to you. If you go to breakfastleadership.com, you can register for a free webinar on burnout prevention, as well as get a free checklist to have successful mornings. Start off each day the right way. Again, that's at breakfastleadership.com. Also, since you are a loyal podcast listener, I'm asking you to like, rate, and review my podcast on iTunes. I look at all the reviews and appreciate your comments, and it helps other potential listeners discover the content I have on the show. I appreciate you, and thanks again for listening.